Buenas tardes. Today I am here with my friend
Kai
and Kai. How long have you been learning Spanish for?
for 13 years
13
now.
years. Wow. And did you start learning Spanish with music?
No, I think I just started learning Spanish with my normal high school classes. Yeah, but through the years, I think I've started to incorporate more music into my studying.
And what would you say are some of the main benefits of learning Spanish with music?
I think that the main benefits for me of learning Spanish through music or learning languages through music in general is, for one, I think that um, music is very easy to memorize. The lyrics are a lot easier to memorize than normal speech.
Mm,
So it puts a lot of phrases into your brain that you can remember later on. And then I also think that another benefit of using music is it gives you a feeling of connectedness to the culture of people that speak the language, and that for me is very important because I think that it gives you a motivation to learn the language
okay,
versus
wow.
if you were just learning something that's completely foreign to you where you don't feel connected to the culture at all. I think that that would be difficult, but when you feel a sense of connectedness to the culture, then your brain, I think, feels like it almost has to learn the language because you want to participate in that culture.
Wow. Can you think of any other benefits?
But so, I mean, for one, I think music is just fun. It's very enriching
It
to.
is a
Mhm.
lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very enriching to expose yourself to different styles of music, and I also think that music, like it's in addition to giving you a sense of culture, it gives you, in a way, a sense of history. Like if you say, like, oh, these are the songs that were popular in 2014. These are
Yeah.
the songs that were popular in 2003. And for me, I think personally, that is the way that I think of history. Like if I want to think about what was America like in 2005, I think about what songs were popular back then, and it puts me in that place of, okay, how was the atmosphere in the country in 2005. So yeah, I think in addition to helping you understand culture, it helps you understand history.
Yeah, for me to add on to that, I think learning Spanish with music is really good for learning grammar for
Hmm.
sure. Instead of just learning grammar from like a grammar book or from a textbook,
Yeah.
I think it makes it a lot easier
Hmm.
as well. For me, I know it has helped a lot with improving my speaking skills, my pronunciation skills as well. And so I don't sound like a robot.
Yeah, and not only does it help you not sound like a robot, but another benefit too is I think that, like, when you're listening to someone singing or even rapping, you're paying very close attention to their rhythm and their enunciation. Because I think a problem we run into as English speakers when we try and speak Spanish or any other language
Yo,
is that we speak Spanish like in the same way that we speak English. So, like the natural way for us as Americans to speak Spanish is like hablamos español así. Like we use the same intonation that we would
yep,
use when we were speaking English. But
exactly.
when you listen to music, you can hear like those little details, things that, like, there's things that are almost like too complex to put into words, like the
Hmm.
feeling of how people speak Spanish,
Yes.
and you can start to imitate that.
And it helps us Spanish learners have better conversations in Spanish as well. Because sometimes in music, right, like if there's a duet or something like that, there's
Hmm.
like a conversation happening.
Hmm.
So I think that's also very amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can hear the phrases, like how people talk to each other in a conversation. Yeah, I
Exactly.
completely agree. You hear like real life phrases that people would use, expressions, especially if the song was written by a native speaker. That's often a great way to learn expressions that people would use because we people write music as they speak, just with the
Exactly.
words that naturally come to their mind.
But now let's get more into the details of how us Spanish learners can learn Spanish with music. And I think one big question that many Spanish learners would have, like right off the bat, would be how can I possibly learn Spanish with music if I can't understand anything?
Hmm.
So, what would you say to those Spanish learners?
I think there are a lot of different strategies that you can use to learn a language.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of the strategies that people use and are successful in, it might just depend on your personality or your situation. I don't think there's one right way to learn a language.
Okay, I
Like
like that.
some people do like taking classes, and I'm in that group. I really enjoy taking
Team
classes.
classes.
Some people, they just prefer to go out there in the world and speak to people. I think talking to people online is another strategy that people like to do. Um, but I think so. I think that learning the language itself, there are a lot of different strategies you can use. But what in as a supplement to whatever you're doing, I do think it's useful to listen to music And even if you can't understand it yet, I think that just familiarizing yourself with the culture and getting used to hearing the sounds of the language, the intonations, I think that that's
Hmm.
useful,
Yep.
and it also gives you something to relate to. Like when you're talking to people who are from a Spanish speaking culture, you can relate to them. You can say that you know these songs, you're a fan of this artist, and it's an
Yep.
easy point of connection when you're meeting people from the culture.
Yeah, and to add on to what you were saying, for me, I know I've listened to a lot of Spanish songs over the past few years, and passively, just listening to those songs in Spanish passively helped me out a bunch,
Hmm.
just by kind of what you were saying, listening to like different patterns and things like that. The pitch going up and down, the
Hmm.
rhythm,
Hmm.
even though I can't actually pick out every single word or every single phrase and I can't like comprehend everything that's happening in the story,
Yeah.
it still helps me to understand how the language sounds.
Yeah,
So
I agree. I think also for me, languages are a vibe, if that makes sense. Like there's a certain
mhm,
feeling to Spanish, there's a feeling to French, there's a feeling to English, and it's hard to put like that vibe, that feeling into words. But it helps me like to familiarize myself with that feeling. Like when I listen to music, when I hear the language itself, you get a sense of like the vibe, and say, okay, this is what Spanish feels like. This is what Spanish sounds like, and I think that's useful for any language.
and honestly, even if you can't understand any words at all of a song in Spanish, all you have to do is look at some lyrics because then you have the words right in front of you, and
Hmm.
then you can listen to the song, listen to the words of that song, and then you can follow along. I
Hmm.
think that is what's really going to help out those beginner Spanish learners that can't comprehend anything at
Hmm.
all, because now you're tying that word to how it actually sounds. So you have a visual, and now you also have the auditory version.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that a problem that we run into a lot is like if we're just reading, if we're just learning by reading, it's you don't have a sense of like how the word actually sounds. But when you're
Mhm.
exposed to both at the same time, you're reading the lyrics and you're listening to the song. I think that's really useful, and it gives you an authentic sense of how the language actually sounds.
In addition to that, you can also listen to many different accents. That's also why I love listening to music in Spanish, because you can listen to music from different Spanish speaking countries and they
Hmm.
all speak, I would say, fairly different, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you can hear not only the differences in accents, but also like the different styles of music that are popular in each different country, and it's a way to familiarize yourself with different cultures. And yeah, it's almost like a traveling in a small way, like
It
when
is,
you listen
yeah.
to music from around the world, because most of us aren't going to be able to travel that often in our lives. I mean,
Hmm.
I hope that everyone can travel around the world in their life, but a small way that we can travel, like in our daily lives, is just by like exposing ourselves to different styles of music around the world. And I think that's really enriching to our life, and also I think it can be good for our brain, because if
Hmm.
you train your brain to appreciate different styles of music, even styles of music that are foreign to you or that you're not used to hearing, I think it's almost like developing new neural pathways in your brain where something sounds completely foreign to you. You don't know how people can appreciate this, but you start listening to it and you start to learn how why people appreciate it. I think that's really good for
Exactly.
your brain. Hmm.
That's really
Hmm.
beautiful that you said that. This goes back to your point about being able to connect with the culture, being able to
Yeah,
connect with
yeah.
the
Hmm.
people. Because I don't know if you know, or I think you know,
Hmm.
so every other Spanish learner can know. When it comes to Spanish music in different
Hmm.
Spanish-speaking countries, it's incredibly important. It's so ingrained into the culture.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's very ingrained. And one thing I love about just the Spanish speaking world is how much variety of music there is. And
Hmm.
there are all these styles that are just radically different from one another. Like even just in Latin America, you have bachata, merengue, cumbia, salsa, cha cha,
Yep,
and then in Spain, that's a whole nother world of music. You have flamenco, rumba, and you could spend the rest of your life like diving into these different styles, and you would
absolutely.
use it, that you would just be scratching the surface. So it's really something fun to dive into, and there's styles that are that I think are interesting. They're not it's not just pop music.
Yep,
There's a lot of just very like, exotic, foreign, musically interesting styles from the Spanish speaking world. Hmm.
exactly. And you can also learn a lot of slang from music as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that's why I like listening to Spanish music as
Mhm.
well, because you get to learn a lot of new words, a lot of new phrases that you wouldn't get from a textbook, or
Mhm.
you wouldn't get from like a regular Spanish
Mhm.
class. But you can get it from these songs.
Yeah, and also you can get like local phrases too. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
things that maybe if let's say the song is from the Dominican Republic, it might be something that's only said in the Dominican Republic, and I think that it's fun to research too.
Yep.
Like if especially maybe I'll ask like a native speaker, let's say someone from Mexico, like what does this line in the song mean? And they don't
Exactly.
know. Then it's oh that's interesting. Let me go research that. Then you find out it's this special phrase that's only used in the Dominican Republic. I think it's very interesting to research those things.
Hmm.
And then it's interesting too, like if you can meet someone from that culture and you know like a few words that only are said in their country, it can be that can be an interesting point of connection.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And that's how you start a very long conversation in Spanish.
Yeah, yeah.
And like, yeah, to add on to your point, if we're talking about like Dominican Spanish and Dominican music, right? There is this one artist named Anthony Santos,
Hmm.
and one of his songs is titled "Me Gusta Esa Vaina."
Hmm.
What's a vaina?
Well, I know what that means. It means a thing, a
Yeah,
bana, yeah. Hmm. But
but like
that's
if you're not
very
from there,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's like a very Dominican word
Yeah, and I also learned that. I learned that word as well from music,
from
because
music.
yeah,
Yep.
in like reggaeton and in merengue, I think there are a few songs where that word comes up, but it's
Yep.
only from I think the Caribbean countries that
Hmm.
say that. So that's a very slang word. That yeah, we both learned it through music, so it's
Exactly.
interesting.
And yeah, and
Hmm.
this and the same thing goes with the differences in between all the different genres of
Hmm.
music, right, in Spanish, because like Caribbean Spanish can
Hmm.
be fairly different, like you said, from music from Spain.
Absolutely, yeah.
Very very
I mean, a
different,
world apart. Hmm.
very very different. Like the
Hmm.
conjugations can be different.
Hmm.
Everything's different. For example, I have one song here by Mark Anthony and Daddy Yankee, and the title is "De Vuelta Pa la Vuelta." Pero pa is not necessarily
Hmm.
like a formal, like a formal Spanish word.
Hmm.
It should be para, pero
Yeah,
it's pa.
yeah,
And then there's an apostrophe.
yeah,
Like what does that mean?
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
So like that's why it's like it was super mind blowing for me to see that when I started to listen to Spanish music from different countries. I
Hmm.
was like, this is not Spanish, but yes, it is.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And I also that's a phrase that I also learned from music as well. Pa, because most of the time when people are singing, I don't think they don't pronounce the word para. They just say pa, and
Pa.
I think it's that way a lot in speech too. People just say pa instead of para, but
Yep.
it's an interesting way to learn those more informal expressions.
Hmm.
Is the music? Hmm.
Very very informal.
Yeah, yeah.
And since I have dived into this new world of Spanish, I'd say,
Hmm.
Caribbean Spanish, it definitely has changed the way that I speak. It's so different from the formal Spanish that I would use, and that's it.
Hmm.
Very, very different.
Yeah, and I think it's almost it can be subconscious a lot of the time. The expressions that you hear, whether it's through music or from the people in your life, you absorb them and you start using them. And before you know it, if you're listening to a lot of Dominican music, you might sound like a Dominican. Or I've noticed in you in particular, your Spanish it sounds Dominican to me, and I
Yeah.
think that's because yeah you've traveled there, and I think because you listen to a lot of Dominican music. Hmm.
Mm. And I randomly
Yeah.
may shout out Oy say baby. I don't know if that's from the Dominican Republic
Yeah.
specifically, but I
Hmm.
hear that a lot in Dominican songs.
Well, yeah, that's something they say.
Oy say baby, like
That
in the
we're drinking
songs.
today. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I don't know if it's like a good thing, but from the songs that I've heard it in, it's because like the guy is sad, like or
Oh,
from a girl or something like that, from a
like
breakup. Yeah,
oh, we're
right.
drinking tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one easy method that I have used to increase my speaking skills
Hmm.
with Spanish music is again following along with the lyrics and trying to sound exactly like that artist. And that is very challenging because some Spanish songs are very very fast, and again have a lot of words and phrases that I have never seen before, have never heard before. So it is a challenge to try to imitate, exactly what I'm hearing. And then, of course, I'm not the best singer, so that's also adds to the challenge.
Yeah, that is a challenge for sure. But one of the good things about trying to sing music is a lot of the times you can't help it. Like if you love a song and you're by yourself, a lot of the times, at least me, and I think everyone does this, you just start singing along. and you can't help it because you're just enjoying the song. So
Exactly.
you might even start practicing just unintentionally, just because you're loving the song and you start singing along.
Yep,
Hmm.
exactly. There's one song called Será que sí by Maelo Ruiz. You should definitely look up that song and sing along, or at least attempt. It's probably one of the hardest songs for me to follow along
Hmm.
with because it's so challenging. It's fast and it uses pretty long words and
Yeah.
he says them very fast. And
Hmm.
it's very challenging.
Yeah, it does sound like a challenge. Another challenging thing too is like trying to rap along to a lot of the different raps in Spanish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
Hmm.
man, like Dimbo or
Yeah. Yeah.
reggaeton.
Yeah.
Hard, man.
Hmm.
Very, very hard. So, what is your favorite genre of Spanish music? Would you say,
That's challenging. I
or
think,
genres?
yeah, genres. I think I listen to a lot of just pop music in Spanish, but
Okay,
if I had to pick my favorite genre, I would say bachata is the genre I
bachata.
listen to the most. Hmm.
Okay. How about artists now?
Artist, that's hard, but I think I would go with Romeo Santos.
Romeo Santos.
Hmm.
Yeah, he's technically the king of bachata, right?
That's what they call him. Well, I think that's what he calls himself,
That's what
and then the name, the public adopted the name after he called himself that.
And what are some of your favorite songs
From Romeo Santos or in general?
in general? Yeah.
Wow. Favorite songs in Spain. Wow. Let's see. I love um I love Romeo Santos's new album. That's what I've been listening to the most.
Okay.
If I had to pick a favorite, or let's say favorites song from that, I love the song Boomerang. I also love the song Solo Conmigo. So
Yeah.
that's what comes to mind because that's what I've been listening to lately. But other songs, another artist that I love in who sings in Spanish. Like if I had to pick, I love a lot, but if I had to pick
Yeah.
some of my favorites, I love Julieta Venegas, who she's very famous in Mexico, but she sings a lot of
Mexico.
love songs.
Okay.
She has a probably my favorite love song of all time is Limon y
Really?
Sal by Julieta Venegas, and
Oh,
yeah, and I mean there are a lot of others. I listen to a lot of salsa music as well. I love Mark Anthony, and yeah,
that's my
absolutely,
guy.
yeah, yeah, probably the most famous salsa singer of modern times.
Absolutely.
And
Sin duda.
yeah, I think those are some of my favorites. And I'm sure I'm forgetting people as well.
Oh,
But
of course. It's
yeah,
a
but
very, very long
yeah,
list. Well, thank you very much, Kai, for joining me in this
hmm,
conversation about learning Spanish with music because I know it's incredibly helpful and it's definitely going to help many Spanish learners that will be watching this
hmm.
video.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. This was a blast, and yeah, I enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you very much.
Hmm.
And please make sure you take a lot of notes because learning Spanish with music is really fun and really exciting and it will change your life. I think. You think it can change some Spanish learner's life?
Absolutely, I think that music is transformative.
There you go. All right, now watch this next video.
Thank you.